Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 89 of ReelBlend, a podcast that knows now why you cry. My name is Sean O'Connell. I am the managing director at CinemaBlend, and damn, folks, do we have the best episode in store for you guys. People in the past have come to ReelBlend for behind-the-scenes stories from the movie circuit and very cool interviews, and we have all of that in store for you guys in one episode this week, number 89. We're going to be doing, for some episode highlights, the latest and final, we think, trailer for Star Wars, Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. We have stories from some very awesome trips to get into that all three of us have been able to go on. And this week we have Ed Norton, the director and star of Motherless Brooklyn, as our guest. But before we get to all that amazing content, I have to introduce my illustrious co-hosts, starting with Jake Hamilton of Fox 32 in Chicago. Hello, Jake. How are you?
I thought you were going to go with Kevin first this week since he wasn't here. I can never predict which order you're going to go in.
It's true.
It's a fun game.
I decide that in the moment.
It's like a little mini blend game every week.
That only we get to play. The other voice back with us after missing a week. It wasn't consecutive weeks, was it, Kevin?
No, we did it. We did a recording before I left.
Oh, right. That's right. Well, Kevin's back with us. Kevin McCarthy of Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. Hi, Kevin. How are you?
Hi. An unbiased opinion based on your intro you just did. I would listen to that episode.
Yes, you would.
So the blend game is basically like Sophie's Choice, where Sean has to choose between the two of us every single week. And Gabe's just sitting in the dark.
The reference in the intro, obviously, if you don't know, is to T2. And part of the reason
you don't know, why are you listening to this podcast?
Yeah, really, exactly. Part of the reason why I started with that is because the boys are heading out to Hollywood, as they say, to do the Terminator Dark Fate junket, if it happens. And
don't.
And they may potentially get a chance to sit down.
Sean's on my side on this.
Arnold Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton.
Not on your side.
If it happens, yes. Okay, so reviews. We always start the episode with reviews that you guys write to us, and there's multiple ways that you can get them to us.
We always start the episode telling you all the movies we haven't seen.
Yes, we do get to that eventually, too. You can go over to the iTunes page and leave us a review there. You can also email us, ReelBlend@CinemaBlend.com. To your guys' point, I know you guys ask me this every single week, there are more people who are playing the blend game using the email that not more than social media. Obviously, most people are still playing along on Twitter, but a lot of people are using the email ReelBlend@CinemaBlend.com, so keep those emails coming. And this one comes from Alan N. Jax, and I don't know if that means Jacksonville, possibly, and he says, an impressive podcast. Sean, Kevin, and Jake, thank you all. I've been reading CinemaBlend and getting email notifications for years. Somehow I never heard of ReelBlend. I stumbled across RB last week, and all I can say is, nice. In quotes. I have been binging ReelBlend, and I mean Kevin Smith, Quentin Tarantino, Kevin Feige, etc. Superlative interviews and insights. I get the impression the interviewees, who I would expect to be self-important and cynical, really enjoy speaking to you guys. And I enjoy hearing you ask the questions I would ask. You are real fans, just like the listeners. Even the interviews with directors who I'm not familiar with are fascinating and make me want to watch some of their movies. I grew up in the Bronx watching the likes of Shalit, Siskel and Ebert, and Reed. I never related to them. They liked hoity-toity flicks while I loved things... Oh, listen to this. They loved hoity-toity flicks while I loved things like T2 and Beverly Hills Cop. Please keep up the outstanding work. I will be listening. That's awesome. That's awesome.
I will say though, with those names he mentions, we wouldn't be where we are today without those critics. And it is interesting because we're going to get into a bit on our show today about kind of what's going on generationally with filmmakers and certain movies that are hitting with different audiences nowadays that maybe not are not being liked by certain older filmmakers. So to that review, thank you. But you have to know that those are the pioneers. Like those are the beginning of film criticism.
But even with their films, I still think we figure out a way to sort of approach them in a way that maybe like helps people kind of understand them a little bit better. Like, I don't think we ever condescend to anyone.
I think what you're trying to say, Sean, is that, and I agree with you. I think we come at it from more of a, I mean, at least from my opinion, based on the way we talk and the way we sound, we come at it from like friends talking about movies that just want to hang out, like in the sense of we're not writing a very deeply thought out like thematic review that's going to have like big words. We're just kind of like talking about movies as if friends are talking. I think that's what he's probably saying.
I would assume that as well too. One way that people are able to communicate with us is the weekly poll, a function that we are now doing where every Friday I will put a poll up on the ReelBlend account. You guys will vote on it, and it usually triggers a conversation that we will take it from here. We put this one up last Friday because I believe it was right after Paul Dano got cast as the Riddler. And that, you know what, I said that out loud and that sounded really strange. Like,
awesome casting.
I remember that he got cast,
amazing.
But like, so Zoe Kravitz now is Catwoman. Paul Dano is going to be playing the Riddler. And then, of course, you have Robert Pattinson as the Batman. Those are your three choices for Matt Reeves' film. Jake, tell me which one you think won for your favorite recent Batman casting announcement, Pattinson, Dano, or Kravitz.
Are we allowed to vote? Because I vote on our
You can vote, sure,
poll.
of course.
I vote.
Yeah.
I voted for Paul Dano, but I would say I think Pattinson won.
Oh. Kevin, do you have a...
I mean, I think the Pattinson casting is amazing. I'm a huge... Like, the Dano casting, I think, is perfect. It's almost as if Matt Reeves knew exactly who he needed and wanted. I mean, after what Paul Dano did on There Will Be Blood, I mean, I think he's one of the most underrated actors working today. But Pattinson makes me happy because of the comeback. And again, we're in the World Series right now, and I'm not the biggest sports fan on the planet, but my favorite thing about the World Series right now is watching Ryan Zimmerman succeed. And like, I mean, I remember when I first started in the DC area, Zimmerman was like the poster boy for the Nationals, and the team never really had this big of a break that it has right now. And last night during the World Series Game 1, when Zimmerman hit that home run, and I'm not a big sports guy, but that thing hit me. I had like tears in my eyes because, and kind of going back to Patton. Here's my point though. To Pattinson, I know Jake's wrapped me up because we're playing the Astros, but my point about Pattinson is Pattinson did the Twilight movies, and Pattinson was put into a bubble, in my opinion, where he wasn't taken seriously as a great actor. And I think that without Twilight, I don't think he ever would have gotten Batman, but with Twilight, it came with a certain level of baggage that, hey, you were in those movies. So to see him get good time, crush good time, and then have Reeves cast him as Batman, I love stories like that. And I love stories that where someone has a comeback and they're going to do great, in my opinion.
So does that mean you think that he got the number of votes? I asked you who got the number of votes.
I forgot that that's what we were still doing.
Oh, Sean, I thought you asked me which of the three castings I thought was the best one. I'm sorry.
I wanted you to guess which one got the most.
I'm sorry. I misunderstood
this
that.
Is going well.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I thought you were asking which of the three castings was the better of the cast. I'm sorry. My apologies.
Well, that's okay. Well, listen, everybody voted Paul Dano, actually. Paul Dano got 36%. Wow. Yeah. So people are really
But 36% means that was also, they had to be still pretty close then.
Zoe Kravitz got 33 and Pattinson got 32. So pretty much everyone's kind of pleased with it. I had a great viral video idea that I pitched to our video team, and they didn't do it. I wanted them to take the damn milkshake scene from There Will Be Blood and put a Batman mask on him and then put a Riddler mask on Paul Dano. And I just think that would have gone viral.
That would be amazing.
Wouldn't that be great? But cool. My video team didn't want to do it. They figured it didn't have enough value for their time. That's what I'm dealing with here. So anyway, keep an eye on ReelBlend's Twitter account every Friday. We'll put up a new one soon. We're recording on, what day is today? Wednesday? And then you guys will be able to vote in it, and then we'll be able to trigger a new discussion. So for regular listeners, we're going to do something a little bit different this week because we're so excited about the fact that we got time with Ed Norton. We want to throw to that interview sooner than we normally would. Usually interviews go a little bit later in the show, usually right before the Blend game. But for Motherless Brooklyn, Warner Brothers came around to us and offered Ed Norton. Now, he's the star of that film, and he's also directing. It's only his second film directing it. And he went on a regional tour in addition to doing some press for it. And he came through Washington, D.C. So Kevin got a chance to sit down with him. Kevin, how did that go? What was that like?
Well, it's cool. I think our viewers and listeners actually love hearing the behind the scenes of how things come about. Yeah. I wanted Jake to talk real quick, briefly before I tell about how I did the interview. Jake was supposed to do it initially, actually, in New York, but Jake's schedule didn't align with it because just tell people real fast, because it's kind of cool. People don't realize how how he juggled these.
The amount of travel.
And this particular interview took place in DC, and I'll get to that. But Jake, you were originally going to do this.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of obviously traveling behind the scenes, and you know, a lot of times they're in different cities, and this just happened to be a case where I was set to interview Edward Norton, and I did for TV a couple of days after Kevin did in New York. Had to immediately hop on a flight and go from New York to LA to see Jojo Rabbit that night, and then interview the cast of Jojo Rabbit. So it was just one of those situations where I couldn't even stick around to talk to Ed Norton at lunch, which is normally where we do these things, or sometimes even after the junket, because the second I was done with him with TV, I had to hop and go do. I mean, you know, it's behind the scenes madness, but you know, it makes for good stories.
I like those stories, and check out Jake's YouTube interviews with Jojo Rabbit. They're really great. But yeah, Edward Norton was incredible. To be able to talk career with him was really wild. And I think one of the things about this podcast that I've always said that I love is the longer form that we have. We have 4 minutes in a TV room, and this is a 30-minute very casual sit-down interview. We cover everything you'll hear from Primal Fear to American History X to Fight Club to Motherless Brooklyn. And yeah, it was truly an honor to sit across from someone that I had been watching for the past, 20-something years, and just have someone actually openly want to talk about their movies in detail. Yeah. So
that's the thing. Like, we got him as a director, but you forget how many films he's been in, both as a leading man, as a contributing, as a supporting actor too. He's worked with so many amazing directors, and he gets into a lot of that too. Let's throw it to it. So you guys don't have to wait any longer. This is Ed Norton discussing the finer points of his career, as well as his new film, Motherless Brooklyn.
Ready to roll?
Ready to roll.
All right. Well, first of all, Mr. Norton, thank you for joining the ReelBlend podcast. This is an absolute honor to have you. Motherless Brooklyn opens up on November 1st. As a director, you directed Keeping the Faith. You direct this film. What are things you learned about yourself as an actor by directing yourself? Like, what's something that you noticed, like, okay, I do this as an actor because now I'm directing myself and I see these moments?
I would say it sort of goes the other way. I think it's more that because you know yourself as an actor, you know what to do as a director, if that makes any sense. Sure. I guess I think the better way to put it almost is that when you mash the two up, certain things that you do as an actor to protect or hold on to your own sense of your performance, you can let go of that because it's you who's going to edit the performance, right?
Interesting.
So.
Oh wow! Yeah,
I think that no matter what your level of trust is with a director, there's a certain component of every actor that maybe doesn't go too crazy on experiment, because it's almost like you don't. It's almost like you're a writer and you don't want people to see your early draft, right? And in some ways, for me, especially with this role, this character has Tourette syndrome and obsessive compulsive disorder, and so his physical tics and his outbursts are a thing that I needed to calibrate, right? But knowing that I'm really only working with myself as a director and an editor, it let me be unself-conscious as an actor, in the sense that I could say, well, I'm going to try this on the subtler end. I'm going to try a completely over-the-top version. I'm going to do a lot. I'm going to give myself a lot of raw material to work with without any self-consciousness about which one's right. And that actually helped me work faster in some ways, to be honest. So that,
It's interesting because you talk to a lot of actors who will do their acting on a set, and then the final product will come out and the edit could completely change the performance that they did on the set that day or the movie. I'm curious about, you mentioned the Tourette's element to me. That's fascinating to me because there's got to be a balance there, right? Of not doing it too much, but doing it in a right amount. And I feel like you capture it perfectly. I'm just curious, is there a balance? Is there a push and pull of, like, am I doing it too many times? Do I need to pull it back a little bit? Because I feel like you found a perfect balance.
Well, the thing about Tourette syndrome is that there actually is no perfect.
Yeah.
Because some people, it's a remarkable condition that in the sense that it expresses itself in people in highly individualistic ways. In other words, like there are people who blink compulsively, and that's the extent of it. There are people who have a physical twitch that you might, probably people all around them think that they just sort of compulsively stretch their neck or stretch their jaw. And I have a friend who's a litigator in New York who I don't think people know has Tourette syndrome, but the thing I'm doing in the movie of kind of the neck stretching and the jaw stretching, he does that all the time, but that's the extent of it. Many people who have Tourette syndrome don't have what's called echolalia, which is the vocal component of it. Other people do, and sometimes they're just fixated on one word. Sometimes the kind of cliche is the most extreme version is the idea that people with Tourette syndrome scream obscenities or yell inappropriate things, which is a true manifestation for some people, but definitely not for all. And so there was an NBA player, Chris Jackson, who in the documentary, one of the documentaries about people with the condition, he talks about the compulsion he has to touch people on the shoulder, which I loved, and I put that in the film.
I love that. It was almost like an emotional thing. Yeah,
people he feels slightly, a connection forming.
It grounds it.
Yeah, and I think that the point being, one of the wonderful things, people I talk to, who I met someone who has a fairly, I don't want to say extreme, but a fairly strong blend of manifestations of Tourette's, who Robin Williams was friends with, and I met when we were doing the film Death to Smoochie, and it was amazing. It was remarkable talking to him about exactly what we deal with in the film, which is the fact that there's aspects of it that were an enormous struggle for him. He was a sculptor. He talked about how he couldn't go to movies, which he loves, couldn't go to the movie theater because he had a very vocal form of Tourette's, and this was isolating for him. It was the sadness of not being denied some of the fun of group experiences and stuff like that, but also the way that it transposed itself through him into his work. And it's fascinating. That I was fascinated by that idea of the duality of things that have weird gifts within them, even as they're difficult. And I think that to me the biggest challenge of the idea of character who has a disability is actually not like it's not the idea that you're going to insult the disability in some reductive way. It's actually the opposite. It's a lot of people, I think what they don't like is seeing like the fact that someone has a disability turning them into a saint. You know what I mean? I think it's like what I've had people come up to me about this and say is what they like is how fully human he is. In other words, he has this ability.
He's not defined by his Tourette's.
He's defined by some other people, but also it's you don't want to take away from him also that he's a little bit passive. He's not heroic. He's kind of, as he says later, he's so enmeshed in his own problems. He's never really bothered to care about other people that much. And in the film, he grows up. He evolves. He ends up inspired by this woman who is herself an activist into realizing, I've got my daily struggles, but I've got to get off the fence and actually be a part of these bigger issues, and to me that's the way you fully humanize someone. I mean, that's honestly, that's like you think about a performance like Daniel Day-Lewis in My Left Foot, right? It's not great because he just does the struggle so beautifully. It's great because he's fully human. He's a real son of a bitch sometimes, he's really nasty to people sometimes. He doesn't take away from him his total complexity as a person.
Yeah, that's interesting. I completely agree with you on that sense, in the sense of like there's faults and everyone has faults in their lives. One thing I find interesting is your character chews gum to try and kind of help him not shout as much or have the moments where he has the Tourette's. As an actor, not in the same vein as Tourette's, but like, do you have like a nervous tick or anything that you have before you perform, and a gum chewing thing that you do to kind of get yourself kind of grounded before you perform?
It's an interesting question. I'm not I'm not particularly ritualized because I find like different pieces of work have such different demands on them. The style is so different, the type of the character is so different. And I think like sometimes I relate more. Robert De Niro told me one time that he always has some sort of a secret talisman, you know, he always has something like in his pocket or so that is an anchor for him into what the character's sort of secret life is that he never tells anybody about. His thing, and I think things like that I relate to more. Like I've had characters that to me the point of connection was just the boots, the shoes, because they change your posture so much.
Like which ones?
Well, I mean, you know, like Worm and Rounders to me like was very activated by the clothing and that was to me like it's like a skin. You put it on and you're in it. Other things are it's a vocal component or something like that. And I think that everything's different. There's different access points. I remember someone told me that Jack Lemmon, who no one would call Jack Lemmon a method actor, but I think he was kind of a genius. Someone told me Jack Lemmon would be sitting, chatting with someone, you know, on the set, blah, 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 blah. And they would say, like, you know, we're ready, Mr. Lemmon. And that he had this ritual. He would clap his hands and say magic time and then go on. And that he never went into a take without, you know, like almost like he stopped the moment he was in, went magic time. And that was like his like meditation and his trigger to get refocused. But I don't have that one.
Yeah.
I don't have that one.
You know, one thing I find interesting is you obviously narrated Fight Club, you narrate here, and as narration is interesting to me because it's such a personal thing. We're not seeing your face, we're hearing your voice. You have to inflect a certain way. Can you talk about like maybe what you did with Fight Club narration wise and kind of how that helped shape how you narrated here and the sense of like emotionally delivering narration to an audience without your face. Kind of, I guess the idea of like how Fight Club maybe prepared you for narration in this specifically. I know you've done narration before, but
narration, you call it narration or voiceover.
Voiceover,
yeah.
I guess he was considered the narrator in Fight Club.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Fight Club. My recollection of that that was like it was like a whole second film shoot. It was like Fincher is so exacting in the best ways, but I think we did that narration hundreds of times. Like
sounds like a Fincher thing.
No, but like this one type of mic 5 inches from you, another type of mic a foot from you. You know, change it, put that mic 4 feet away and put that mic closer but slightly to the right. I mean, like he was trying and we were trying technically for the longest time to just get a sound that sounds like a voice inside a head, you know?
Yeah.
And so it almost became like when you repeat something so much, it can get to where you're like, it's like an incantation. You're not even listening to what it's about anymore. And
like the I am Jax lines, like those are, you probably just said those 1,000 times.
Yeah. And there's that thing with that film, there was such a tension between, you know, the thing was like, how surreal is it? How real is it? How much are you trying to create a hyper real sensation? It was so stylistically specific that it was like finding the pitch mattered, you know. But it did. If I took anything from that, it was simply that like it's not good enough to hang a mic in front of a person and do it. It's not gonna. There's a lot of the way a thing plays is a function of how you mic it, how you mix it, where you put it in the center channel versus in the left, right, you know, and you're trying to create an effect.
Did you record differently here?
I did record it differently here. I wanted a little bit more of a everything about the film. We wanted to have a kind of a subliminal sense of like the analog quality, not a fake patina or a fake like crackle of the vinyl in some sense, but we did want. I didn't want. We didn't shoot the film using speed prime lenses. We shot it using old glass on modern bodies, and we didn't record the narration in sort of hyper real, like sounding like you got a set of Bose headsets on. We wanted it to have a certain kind of a flat, inside the head and intimacy, but just not with a quality of like modern high fidelity.
Yeah, it's an amazing. I love the narration. One of the things I find interesting is the cinematography is incredible. Dick Pope is amazing. Way of the Gun. I know you guys worked on Illusionist together, which is amazing. There's a shot in the movie with a puddle. I love that shot so much. And just,
you saw that.
Yeah, the way the shots played out in this film was gorgeous. And then Daniel's score. I mean, it's a leading character. But the Thom Yorke story, I know you've talked about this a little bit, where you got the song, you rewrote elements of the script, or went back into the script and kind of added lines from the title of the song. So I was curious, in your career, over the performances you've done, in a different situation, has a song ever affected the way you've approached a character after you heard it? Like, I know this is different because you wrote the song for your movie, but was there a character you were playing and you heard a song and went, man, maybe I should go in a different direction here? It could be a song.
I don't know if it changed it. When we did this film, The Painted Veil, we were using like this great composer, Eric Satie, that just sort of caught for all of us the sort of weird, I don't know, the melancholy lyricism, but also a little bit dissonant, little dark. That was helpful. When we were doing American History X, like there's a lot of there are white power bands and from England and fewer in the States, but that have a certain kind of a thrash punk vibe. But I didn't want to listen to that. I didn't actually personally want to listen to that stuff, but there were some bands that I loved growing up in the DC, Baltimore area. Yeah, but like there was kind of more the straight edge version of all of that. Straight edge came from here. Like, there was Minor Threat and Fugazi and stuff. And I had Fugazi tracks and Minor Threat tracks that I had really liked in that era. There was a really, we're so past this era, but when I was growing up around here, there was this station WHFS.
Oh yeah,
it was
991.
Yeah, it was the great alt rock. It was like the place you could.
Did you go to HF festivals? Like, remember those big concerts at RFK Stadium?
Well, it's funny. Spike Jonze and I talked about it because he grew up near Rockville, Silver Spring, and HFS was we're older, a lot older than you guys, but it was like the Clash and all the Britpop stuff, and then later like the Pixies and REM and stuff like that. That was where you could hear all those bands, but probably in that era, Fugazi and Minor Threat were like the ones that kind of to us seemed like, wow, this is like, this has like a righteousness to it, right? And I think it was that like righteousness that was a good trigger for me on that film. This one, Tom.
I always call him Thom. Sorry, because it's spelled THOM.
No.
Tom Yorke. Yeah. Sorry, he would probably hate me for that.
Yes, he would leave the
Sorry,
room.
Tom.
Tom gave me the song early enough in the process that it illuminated certain things to me that I realized. It like revealed things that are embedded in the script, but that I didn't feel I was underlining enough, and it made me want to underline. It made me want to underline certain ideas more.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful when, because in a way he wrote the song inspired by the script, but then the song inspired me to underline more or enhance certain things, became more clear to me. And that's just great. That's like just those kind of dialogues are, it's like, I think Francis Coppola said, like, the best thing about making movies is they're collaborative, and the worst thing about making movies is they're collaborative. But I don't actually, the second part is, I think, a little bit tongue in cheek, because the way that super talented people, as you assemble them, the way that 1 + 1 starts to equal 4 is a very real thing. Like, the whole thing is madness. Like, you say, I want to make a big scale epic film of New York in the 50s, and we're going to shoot it in modern New York, and we're going to do big car chases through the city with real cars, and we're going to do this and that and that. And, like, 99% of people, like, head for the door, because they're just like, that sounds bloody and impossible and awful. But the people who kind of assemble around it and go, I know how to do that, those become like that's like, they make you look like you know what you're doing. You know what I mean? And I think we talked about Dick Pope. Dick has shot, for my money, like, the reason he's one of the all-time greats is not just because everything looks great, and in particular to me, the period films he did with Mike Leigh, Vera Drake, Topsy Turvy, the one he was nominated for just the same year as Birdman, Mr. Turner, the one about the British painter Mr. Turner. I knew that working with Mike Leigh, he didn't have prep time and he didn't have long schedules, and I was looking at these films going, I don't understand how a person, and then when I did The Illusionist with him, which we shot on a very short schedule, and I was looking at it and going, how does he make this look this good when working this fast? And I knew I needed that very precisely, because he doesn't add grain. He doesn't do digital tricks. He doesn't add grain. He doesn't put a bullshit sort of patina. He doesn't like say, let's make the whole thing sepia and that will make you feel like you're in the 50s, or he just, there's the kind of glass he uses and the way he lights is just marvelous. And he can work fast. So he was like my MVP.
What blew me away was in the beginning, and when people see the movie, it's truly incredible how the blurring out of the faces as we're in the room with Willis. And for people who, when they see it, I also want to recommend downloading Tom York's song for the film, because it's absolutely incredible. It's part of the film. It's out there. I think it's in the trailer
Daily
as well.
Battles.
Daily
yeah,
Battles. Phenomenal song. So one thing I love about your films over the years as an actor is that a lot of them have great reveals. Like throughout the film, you're kind of, you may be playing two different people, but the reveal throughout that is amazing to me. And obviously one of the best ever is Primal Fear. So I was curious, like going back in that moment as you do that clap, what you remember about
Primal Fear.
Yeah. What you remember about that scene specifically, and then what for you personally as Edward Norton is the biggest jaw-dropping reveal you've seen in a film? Something that just blew your mind.
It's very hard to recollect things like, moments you shot a thing. One of the things that comes to my mind is just simply I remember that I was very, very impressed by Richard Gere, specifically because there was a lot of pressure, there was a lot of chatter and pressure around that production about the ending and about the idea that it should be reshot or we should do it differently, that he should win, that it was important that he should, literally the ideas were as bad as he should punch out the kid. You should realize that he's going to nail him. He should have a recorder on him and be busting him. All these things. And all it was this sort of like terror of Richard's got to win. And Richard was the one who really stood firm almost to the point of refusing to do anything else. He was like, did anybody see what we just did here? Like it was, he was kind of pointing at me and he was like, this is how you use me to best effect because I'm slick. I'm the guy that thinks, he goes, it's a body blow. The last shot of the movie is me standing with my shoulders sagging, punched in the face, and that's it. And I was like, that is really cool. Like this is not like, I need to come out on top. I need to win. It was like, we made the movie work, and the best thing in the world is I just got played. You know what I mean? And I remember thinking like,
the clap.
No, I really, but I admired that. I think Richard was very. I was doing the flashy part of it, but honestly, I think he had a very, very strong instinct that was the way that the movie should end. You know what I mean?
I'm gonna hit you with some rapid fire stuff. So I got 5 more minutes left. I like little things about how characters become characters. Little things about your character in this movie, the way he orders a drink. I'll have an early one, whiskey neat. And it's an interesting little thing that happens a couple times throughout the film. A drink defines a character. The way a person orders a drink, the way a person, the way he does it in the early one. What does it say about, like, those little things are so important. And like, how do you come up with what he drinks? I mean, I'm sure it was it in the book? What he drinks, the whiskey neat? So how do you come up with that?
The book takes place in the 90s. We
99, yeah.
Yeah, we reset it in the 50s. That's a funny question. I
was curious.
I think there's truth in that. I think that the way people talk about a thing conveys their experience with it, you know? So if someone says things in an offhand way, sometimes, especially if they say it in ways that are unfamiliar to us, what I think it does for the audience is it signals two things. It's like, sometimes like, I may not know what he's talking about, but that's cool because I want to understand this world. And what I know is he knows what he's talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'll use a really weird example, but I really love the Peter Weir's film Master and Commander, the one with Russell Crowe and things. Yeah. The first 20 minutes of that movie, they're almost like they're speaking in another language. They're speaking this language of men on the seas. And you don't know what any of the things they're talking about are in reference to. And that's why it's great, because you're like, oh my God, I am on a ship in 1812 or whatever. Yeah. And this is what was said. And I don't know what it means, but this is amazing.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Immersion.
And yeah. Exactly. And I think that first of all, I believe that, like, I don't believe audiences want to understand what's going on. That's not why people go to movies. They go to movies waiting for that moment when the total aesthetic of it, the music, the sound, the way people are speaking, whatever's going on, flips a switch in the head and goes, I am in a place where someone knows where they are taking me, and I am digging being here. And wherever this goes, I'm going. You know what I mean? That's like, I don't think today one person who says they love LA Confidential could tell you what the plot of the film is. That's not what the experience of LA Confidential or Chinatown or any of the movies we love that this is maybe in the tradition of. What happens is you go, whoa, wait a second. This is not tongue-in-cheek. This is not like people playing dress up. I am there. This feels like Hollywood in the 50s, and Russell Crowe is a badass, and Guy Pearce feels like a real, these guys are playing this straight, and it's great, and I am so in, you know, and the music's great, and you just go on the drift, you know, you go on the ride because the magic is happening. You've been transported. And I think that, you know, you were talking about the beginning of the film when Dick and I talked about there's this mysterious meeting happening. But Lionel's on the phone. He's hearing it. He only knows what one person looks like. He knows what Bruce Willis looks like. So Bruce Willis is sharp. But the other people, he doesn't know what they look like. And he's projecting himself into that room.
So it's your perspective.
Yeah, so everyone else is faceless and out of focus. The longer they talk, the more in focus they get. And I think, you know, those kinds of things. And if an audience is going, wow, what is being said here? I don't know what's going on. Bruce Willis sure sounds like he knows what is going on. And what I feel is he just said something that made the room go very quiet. And like Lionel, we're going, something very dangerous just took place, but I don't know what it is. That's what you want. You want, like, you know, you want to put the audience all the way in the dark And so that the rest of the movie is about trying to get out of the dark. You know what I mean? And that's sort of like, how do you do that in an interesting way?
Even just the ordering of the whiskey neat was cool. Daniel Pemberton's score is brilliant. I think he is everything he'd done Steve Jobs. He's just a genius composer. You have this song by Tom York that becomes a centerpiece of the film as well. How much does the song that Tom wrote influence how Daniel's score is written so that it all tonally matches?
It's a good question. There's actually three pieces. There's Daniel's score, there's Tom's song, but then there's also this jazz club in the film where real music's being played, and you have like Wynton Marsalis and his guys curating with me what would have been played, and and then actually playing it. And you need those things to kind of all cohere, right? So in a way, Tom's given me the ballad I wanted, feeling like it's plucked from the past, timeless in a way. Wynton's doing the stuff that's really from that era. And Daniel, who is, I don't use the word lightly, he is kind of a musical prodigy.
Genius.
Yeah, he's really, really quite brilliant. And I agree, he had done very interesting stuff. But to me, I said, look, I want a big like classical jazz thematic melodic thing. But then, by the way, I also want it to have all the fracture and dissonance and weirdness of Kid A, you know what I mean? A Radiohead record. And he's really the guy who pulled it all together and mashed up all those influences in a wonderful way.
That's awesome. I could talk to you all day. Thank you for nerding out me, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for the time.
Obviously, we want to thank Warner Brothers for hooking us up with Ed Norton. We want to let everybody know that Motherless Brooklyn is going to be in theaters on November 1st. I think I'm the only one of the three who hasn't seen it yet. You guys have each seen it because you both did interviews for it. But I'm looking forward to checking it out. I tend to gravitate towards those film noirs, and I know that I go for LA detective stories a lot. This is very much a New York set story, but still looks pretty intriguing. So I'm excited to see how it plays out. News. We're going to jump over to news because earlier this week we had a new and I think final trailer for Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. And
you think it's final? They say final, and then like an international trailer comes out, and then.
I mean, yeah, I guess I do. I mean, we're 2 months away from it, right? Like, what other major event is going to happen?
I think an international trailer is going to drop, and then there's going to be new footage there. By no means do I think is this the last new look at stuff we're going to get.
Interesting. Well, it doesn't matter because my point about this trailer is that it doesn't show us anything. I'm not that excited for episode 9 based on the marketing. That's what I want to say. I'm excited for the concept of episode 9. I think it's going to be the culmination to this trilogy that we've been waiting for. If they keep marketing it as the end of the saga, and I think that's too much for any film to live up to. Like, that's a really daunting thing for JJ to take on. But based on everything that we've seen from the marketing, like the first Force Awakens trailer, almost all of the Force Awakens trailers, even the Last Jedi trailers, I thought at least got me excited for what the movie specifically is. Nothing shown in the Rise of Skywalker ones yet have piqued my interest for this particular experience. And if it's just them trying to hold back details, cool. But it's not working yet for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because I feel like all of the trailers for Endgame earlier this year brought with it that weight of the end of an era. Like, every single one of those trailers, I kind of went in, even though I ended up not being crazy about that movie, I went into that movie thinking, like, this is a pinnacle movie moment for my life. Like, this is, and I feel like they're trying to replicate that, and it's not working.
Well, I think I have a reason.
Okay.
Endgame was at least arriving at the end of a series of stories that were strategically told to lead up to this. Episode 9 has to play catch up and be the end for a bunch of movies that I don't think, that I don't think it was, conceived as when we get to 9, it's going to wrap up everything. They're like reverse engineering that, and I'm not sure how. It may work. It may be great. But
what's interesting about that is I was on the air yesterday talking about the Rise of Skywalker trailer, and all of my anchors essentially were like, is this one within the main storyline?
See, that's not good that people are asking that question. And
that's what I'm saying. And that to me is fascinating because, like you just said about Endgame, like it was specific. I mean, even the name obviously was something that was geared towards that. But I think Star Wars is so oversaturated now, unfortunately, to a point where people don't know if the version of the story we're watching is a one-off, spin-off, is it a prequel, sequel? And I think it's hard to me to actually fathom the idea of this being the 9th and final film of the Skywalker saga. And because it's been so many years, and there was that 3 trilogy element that happened with episode 1, 2, and 3 in between, people don't. I mean, listen, we get it. We're all like massive fans of these movies, but I think it's hard for people to understand that this is the 9th and final film of the thing that started in 1977 that actually happened to be episode 4. I mean, it's very confusing. It really is.
It doesn't feel like it's ending a trilogy of trilogy. It feels like it's ending one trilogy.
This trilogy.
But it doesn't feel like the end of a trilogy because a majority of the characters. Now, I do think that JJ is going to bring with it a lot of fan service. I wouldn't be surprised if there were an Endgame style battle, in which case we got a lot of space Jedi ghosts of past Jedis from over the course of nine movies. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw
Luke will get an epic moment.
Well, Luke, and honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if they brought back Ewan McGregor, which would be great to see Ewan McGregor back as before he goes to the series. I guess it would have to be Alec Guinness because it's your last image when you're good. So I wouldn't be surprised if we got a digital Alec Guinness. I wouldn't be surprised if Liam Neeson came back.
I'll tell you right now, I would pay good money for JJ to reset that scene with Rey on the cliff and have that scene go down the way we all wanted it to go down.
It's not bad.
My point is, though, like episode 8 undid so many things about episode 7 that I loved that the thing that makes me curious about 9 is how JJ is going to rectify that. Like, how is he going? Is he going to fix it? Is he going to just go along with how Ryan? Because I mean, for me, and this is something we discussed in the show before that I find very frustrating, is that these 3 movies should have been mapped out before 7 was even started. You know what I mean? There should have been a definitive way that 7, 8, and 9 were going to go down. And the fact that 8 took 7 off the track it was on bothers me. And JJ being attached to 9 is the only reason I'm actually excited about 9. Trailer-wise, though, I disagree.
You liked it. You liked the trailer.
I love the trailer. Now, I agree with your points. It did not have an end game feeling. It did not have this is the end of 9 films. I did not feel that whatsoever. What I loved about the trailer, to me, were the emotional moments, but the way they remixed John Williams' score. Mm-hmm. That thing hit me so hard. I mean, it was funny. Our buddy Josh, who does what we do, he mentioned that he was watching it on a plane on without Wi-Fi, and it was every 3 seconds it was buffering, and he said it still made him cry. And I'm like, honestly, when I was sitting in my bed watching that trailer, it was the music that freaked me out. Like, and there's something. But Sean made a good point that actually, now that I watch the trailer again, I think about the trailer is the same as like every other trailer for Star Wars. The voices in the background, to me, the Rise of Skywalker trailer we saw at Celebration was better than this one. But I still loved it.
It's just a little disappointing. And you guys know, I don't have to really say that I'm a Star Wars fan. The dip in excitement, I am. I remember like watching the episode, and I get episode 7 was sort of a movie we never thought was going to happen. But my emotions watching the episode 7 trailer versus because I was watching Dr. Sleep when the episode 9 trailer dropped, and then I went and was doing some stuff, doing like something after the screening, and kind of had this moment where I paused and went, "Oh crap, guys, the Star Wars trailer dropped," and I walked outside like. 5 years ago, that never would have been the case. I would have ran out of that theater and watched it immediately. But the fact that I had to almost remind myself, oh, guys, there's a new Star Wars trailer. I mean, look,
dude, I'll watch the Force Awakens trailer now and get more excited.
Me too.
I agree
than I was
100%.
watching the episode 9 trailer.
To Jake's point, I know we got to move on, but to Jake's point, this is what's fascinating about that trailer is that nothing all right, here's where we are right now. We're at episode 9. Before 7 came out, we still had the idea of Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Princess Leia, the idea of those characters being in another Star Wars movie. Going into 9, at the end of 8, I had no desire in my mind to think about this story continuing. Now, with Carrie Fisher's passing, clearly I'm very happy that JJ is going to utilize scenes that he shot in 7 that he did not use. But with Luke technically, quote unquote, being dead and Han Solo being dead, it doesn't feel like we're bringing an end to something that started in 1977. That's the issue.
It'd be like if you did Endgame without Captain America and Iron Man. Yeah.
Yeah.
We just got to finish this story up, but those 2 main guys are not going to be part of this.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Isn't that a little weird, though? Like, we're finishing a story without the 3 main characters?
Yeah, it is. All right. We got to move on. This was a story that came up last week, and we didn't touch on it or we might have briefly, but we kind of thought it would be old news. But then it didn't really go away because a few more filmmakers came around to weigh in on it. And then today, Bob Iger decided he was going to chime in also. And the debate is whether or not Marvel movies are quote unquote cinema. And I think, Jake, did we talk about it? Did we just talk briefly about the fact that Scorsese said that? Or
at the time, I don't think Coppola had really weighed in.
Not yet, no.
So it's really, it's, I was saying before we started rolling on the show today, I was so excited for the Joker conversation at fandom to die down. And then this seems to have replaced it, and now I'm ready for this conversation. I'm just so over everyone just being mad at people. And at the beginning of the year, if you told me there would be a point in the year where people were attacking whether or not Martin Scorsese knows anything about movies, I would just want to just claw my eyes out.
Right. Well, so they didn't. The thing about it was Francis Ford Coppola, sort of weighs in. And again, these guys get asked. Of course, they're going to answer, and they should be able to answer. I definitely, they've earned the right to their opinions. But after Scorsese, and essentially the guy who framed the question at Scorsese in the first place was saying that he was asking it from a context of de-aging, and the fact that the Marvel movies have used it on Sam Jackson. So I think he was asking him, did you take a look at what they've done as you were also doing de-aging for The Irishman? So it was in a context.
It wasn't even framed in a hey, do you want to attack Marvel? Like kind of just
That's what bothers me.
Really
by
interesting.
The way,
I didn't know that.
I saw the guy who did that interview tweet out about hey, by the way, everyone's talking about this 15-second snippet from this massive interview I did for this. We talked about everything in his career from all these amazing filmmaking things. And that and what you just said, Sean, that bothers me. That's the story that became the whole thing.
That's how it got taken. Yeah.
Completely out of context. It's almost as if the story was framed to me based on every article that I saw, and everything I saw was Martin Scorsese was asked if he likes Marvel movies and he hates them. That's not what happened.
No, it isn't.
It's a minor quote that he said in the middle of a context of a de-aging question, which was actually a great question to ask him.
Yeah, of course. But now Francis Ford Coppola, he was asked if he likes Marvel movies, and he called them despicable, quote unquote despicable. Now, so much of this just feels like, the older generation lamenting what's dominating the cinemas of this day. And I guarantee you, when those guys were coming up in the 70s, especially Lucas more so than what Scorsese and Coppola were doing in the 70s, I know old filmmakers from the 50s and 60s probably hated Star Wars, and probably viewed it as... They probably even hated Jaws. They probably looked at it as cheap summer blockbuster popcorn stuff. And so I don't think you're ever going to really be able to sort of stop that. But the thing so now Bob Iger, the head of Disney, is weighing in. And he says just today, as while we're recording, they want to bitch about movies. It's certainly their right. And I'm looking for the back half of that quote because he compares it to, he says, do you think that Ryan Coogler and Black Panther are doing is that much different than what Scorsese... I
have the quote.
You have the quote? Read the whole thing in its entirety.
So this is via Get Fandom. So he goes, quote, if they want to bitch about movies, it's certainly their right. Are you telling me that Ryan Coogler making Black Panther is less than anything Scorsese or Coppola have ever done? And the Scorsese and Coppola elements were in brackets. I don't know if he used their names exactly, but that's what he was referring to.
Gotcha. So, I mean, listen... you're never going to convince those guys if they don't think that the superhero movies are good. That's fine. I thought, truthfully, James Gunn had one of the best diplomatic reactions to it, where he said, hey, look, Westerns of a certain era, some were amazing and some were crap that were just churned out there. And basically James Gunn said, my father, back in the day when the sci-fi movies were coming out, I wanted him to go see Star Wars or Star Trek. And he said, I saw it already when it was 2001. There's always going to be this generational divide. But James Gunn said, look, I work in the superhero genre. Some of them are beautiful. And some of them are lazy. That's going to be the case with any kind of film. And I just think this conversation, while it's fun to have and it's fun to sort of bring up and get everybody's opinions, it's getting out of hand. It's getting out of hand now. But how much vitriol is being spilled over this.
And Sean brings up that great point about James Gunn's post, which I thought, again, I love the word diplomatic. It was a great way to say it. And to the Star Wars point he said, quote, I remember a great uncle whom I was raving about Star Wars. He responded by saying, quote, I saw that when it was called 2001 and boy, it was boring. Yeah. I know that you probably said that already on the show with the quotes, but I find that to be an exact understanding as to what is going on here. This is literally a generational thing. And I don't think Scorsese's comments, in my opinion, are, I don't want to say respectful, but I understand more of where Scorsese's coming from. It's the despicable quote that Coppola used that bothered me. That is an inherently very negative way to put down people who work their butts off on filmmaking. And I would argue that Marvel is the reason why cinemas are mostly still going. Like movie theaters are dying in the sense of we have things like Netflix, we have Hulu and Amazon. I am the biggest advocate for theatrical viewings you could imagine, and I understand that it's harder and harder to get people into a theater these days. And the fact that these Marvel movies are making billions of dollars, to me, I like it because it keeps the theatrical experience alive.
To play devil's advocate for a second, I think, part of the process is, could a Martin Scorsese at the time in the 70s, we were blessed with the emergence of all of these incredible filmmakers like Martin Scorsese and Brian De Palma and Francis Ford Coppola and George Lucas, even before he made Star Wars. Could that happen today when theaters are kind of being strangled by Marvel movies? Like, would there be room for that many incredible filmmakers?
Yes.
When 85% of screens are dedicated to movies that start with the Marvel Studios logo.
Here's my answer to that question. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, but that's Quentin Tarantino. That's an established established IP.
Joker is an established IP.
All right, one way or the other.
There's definitely less of it. I mean, nowadays there's definitely.
You're always going to find examples of it, but it's the degree. Like you have to ask yourself, how many filmmakers are for every Jordan Peele we get, how many filmmakers are we not getting because filmmakers are eyeing IPs and franchises and Marvel films?
Let me ask you this: if we lived in a world where the Marvels, the Star Wars, and the franchises didn't exist, would you rather them exist and keep the theater going, or would you rather them not be there and have no theatrical experience?
I think there will always be. I don't think that. I don't think. That's implying that if Marvel movies didn't exist, there would be no movie theaters. Movie theaters existed for years without Marvel movies.
No, my argument is that Marvel franchises, these major things, are keeping theaters going with the current state.
Well,
does that not make sense? Think about Netflix.
But like theaters have been going for forever without Marvel movies.
You're missing what I'm saying. No, Jake. My point is, forever. You're talking about a time before Netflix existed. And before Amazon existed, before Hulu existed, before streaming existed. I'm talking about right now, in this day and age, with those formats, theatrical experience needs these IPs, needs these massive Marvel films. I don't think these AMCs and Regals and theaters will be pumping all this money in to make the theatrical experience as good as it is now without these massive films bringing butts to the seats.
But it's a chicken or the egg thing, because you mentioned Netflix and Hulu and all these streaming services. Great filmmakers are flocking to these streaming services because they can't get the movies they want into the theaters. They can't get the movies because the theaters are choked and the studios are choked by Marvel movies. And I'm not knocking Marvel movies. I'm coming where I'm trying to get where they're coming from.
Hold on, I want to bring up one point which comes to this.
Wait. Jake, I really do. I agree with you. I get that there's two sides happening here. I just feel like because of films like Marvel, the theatrical experience will live on longer and be better for it, in my opinion. I'm not saying that every theater, like an Uncut Gems, which is a masterpiece, is not going to make enough money to keep theaters going. Neither is a film like Marriage Story. Neither is a film like, some of the best movies of this year, even Dr. Sleep, movies I haven't seen Dr. Sleep yet, but Dr. Sleep is not going to make $1 billion. But in my opinion, you have to have these gigantic films to keep this theatrical experience going. Also, filmmakers like Tarantino or Nolan, people who actually care about the theatrical experience, making films on film, projecting them on film, 70 millimeter IMAX, 35 millimeter. Like, we are dealing with filmmakers who are actively trying to keep that theater experience going. And I think that we need these bigger films to pump money into the theaters to make the theatrical experience as good as it can be, in my opinion.
I think both of those points are correct. And the one thing that I would throw back at the Scorseses and Coppolas of the world that they can't refute necessarily is that at most, Marvel releases 3 movies a year. Some years they release 2.
Right.
So what is this overwhelming amount of Marvel movies that they can't handle?
That's a staggering statistic. I mean, you would think that they have
3
more,
movies.
right?
Yes, of course. Now, do they dominate a lot of the headlines because everyone gets excited about the casting or the direction they're going to go? Yes, of course they do. But they're talking about a movie that 3 films that open a year. So
at the end of the day, I want Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, Chris Nolan, and Marvel and all these things to exist. This is the same thing when it comes down to 35 versus digital. I will always be a film guy, but I also understand why digital has to exist.
Sure.
It is we can all coexist and live in the same world together. I think that for someone like Scorsese or Coppola to say the things they're saying, it's a bit ignorant towards the idea of what's keeping the theatrical experience going.
It's closed-minded. Just as any kind of filmmaker. As any other filmmaker, I'm surprised that they would dash any kind of filmmaking. Think
about the Russo brothers, for example. How do they feel when someone like that, like Scorsese, I want his movies forever. I am going to see Irishman in a movie theater. No question I'm going to go to a movie theater for that. But why can't we all exist together? And why can't we see the positives of what Marvel is bringing to the theatrical experience? That's all. I want Endgame to beat Irishman at the Oscars this year. That would be tremendous. All right, anyway. Could you imagine? That actually, Sean?
Jake, what am I telling you? That's my number 1 of the year still.
Sean,
it has to be. It has to be your number 1 because it's your favorite movie of all time. What blows my mind is that you have a movie that came out this year that is your favorite movie of all time that now is not even in contention for my top 10.
That's crazy.
Sean, nuts. Sean, you know what's crazy? I could see Endgame almost getting the Argo effect. All this negative backlash towards Marvel based upon these stories.
Keep in mind, a majority of the Academy are Scorsese and Coppola and probably feel the exact same way as they do.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I know. All right, anyway, we promised at the beginning of this episode that we were able to share stories from some of the... this week in particular was a week filled of unbelievable trips that we went on. And I put something on Twitter that if you're a fan of the name dropping episodes on this show, of just places that we've been to or people that we've been able to meet and interview, this one's going to be pretty special. We're going to start with Jake, who was able to go out to Colorado for a Dr. Sleep trip. If you're following his social media, it was a total blast. Jake, your video has not dropped yet, right?
It has not. I mean, my piece that I put together for the story, I just finished a first cut and sent it to the boys to kind of get some technical feedback.
All right, so tell us why you had to go to Colorado for a Dr. Sleep trip.
Well, it's actually pretty cool. So Warner Brothers wanted to do something a little different, other than a traditional Dr. Sleep junket, which they are going to be doing this weekend, which I think Kevin is attending. They wanted to kind of give us an experience. Now, if you don't know, the Overlook Hotel, where Jack Torrance and his family go to in The Shining, is based on a hotel called the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. The reason that this is so special is because after writing 2 books, Stephen King had writer's block. and his funds were running low, and he couldn't. Everything he was sending to his publishers was getting rejected. So they took a teacher's job in Boulder, Colorado, and one weekend his wife Tabitha just suggested, you know what? Let's just go up into the mountains. Let's clear your head, and maybe you'll find some inspiration. They land at a hotel called the Stanley Hotel, and the people at the front desk say, dude, we're closing for the winter tomorrow. Like, there's no one here. Like, what do you want to do? Kevin, yes.
Can I ask you a stupid question, Jake?
Yes.
The idea of it being the Stanley Hotel and then Stanley Kubrick directing the movie.
Total coincidence.
Okay.
Total
That's
coincidence.
so weird.
Total coincidence. So they say, look, dude, we have all the rooms are not prepared for guests. We only have one that hasn't been turned over for the winter. You can have that, but you can only have it for the one night because we close up tomorrow. So they gave him room 217. So they're the only ones in the hotel. At a certain point, his wife Tabitha goes to bed, and he is roaming the halls. And at this point, he's really battling alcoholism. He's had a really hard time with that. He has a 3-year-old son who he wants to try to be better for. He finds himself at the bar, and there's a bartender named Lloyd. Now, if you've seen The Shining, you know what that means. Stephen King puts a $20 bill on the bar and says, "How much whiskey will that get you?" And Lloyd said, "Your money's no good here." Now, in The Shining, there's a certain reason why he says it, but in real life, the reason he said that was he'd already done the taxes for the bar for the season, and he didn't want to redo the whole tax for all the taxes for $20 worth of whiskey. So they end up trading ghost stories over $20 worth of whiskey, and Stephen King drunkenly stumbles his way back to room 217, where he sees a wound-up fire hose on the wall. And kind of, it just strikes him as weird. He looks at it, it just doesn't seem right. He stumbles his way into room 217 and has a night of, basically a sleepless night because he has such horrible nightmares of this fire hose chasing his son down the hallway, coiling around his son and devouring his son alive. He wakes up in a cold sweat, he lights a cigarette, goes and stands by the window, and starts to write The Shining. Now, if you know The Shining, that image might not be familiar with you if you only know the movie, but that's something that happens in the book, the fire hose chasing Danny, and there are also a lot of elements in the book that aren't in the movie, like the hedge animals coming to life and stuff like that. But that's where he got his inspiration for The Shining, which was the third book that he wrote. Now, it's not the hotel from the movie. The hotel from the movie, the exterior was the Timberline Lodge in Oregon, and the interior were a soundstage in London. But for all intents and purposes, and this is something that Mike Flanagan the director of Dr. Sleep, said to me, the Stanley Hotel is the true Overlook Hotel because
he used the word definitive too.
Definitive, exactly. Yeah. Because that's the hotel that Stephen King imagined when he wrote it. And in fact, there is a 6-hour miniseries that ABC produced in the late 90s. It's called Stephen King's The Shining, and it's a much more faithful adaptation to the book. If you really like the book, it's that, like the hedge animals.
I didn't know they did that.
Yeah, the fire hose.
Is it a documentary or is it like an actual?
It's actual.
Like the Stand.
Yes, someone else plays Jack Torrance. Someone else plays Danny, and that was shot at the Stanley.
I didn't know that.
Also at the Stanley, it was the hotel from Dumb and Dumber, which is a fun little and hanging in the bar is the moon landing newspaper. And I walked in and I looked at it and I go, no way. And I kind of like looked around thinking someone would know what I was doing. And then I just walked away and went, we landed on the moon!
See, I would have gone to that hotel and done a whole story on Dumb and Dumber.
And the stairs where they like race up the stairs, you know?
Is the toilet there?
It has to. Well, no, that was her home, right?
Did Stephen King use the toilet?
Oh, that is her home, yes.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
It is. So I ended up going there for kind of an experience of what it means to, to have that hotel and kind of see, if it inspired us to do anything. So my piece that I'm going to be airing on Fox in Chicago is less of a junket piece and more of a behind the scenes look at the hotel that inspired not just him to write a book, not just Stanley, which then turned Stanley Kubrick into, to turn The Shining film, but then a whole generation of filmmakers, because like Mike Flanagan told me, my career came from watching Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, which came from Stephen King's The Shining, which came from the Stanley Hotel. So there's an endless number of creative artists who can trace their roots back to this little hotel in this little town in Colorado. And that's where I was this past week.
Did it feel haunted?
I don't really buy into the paranormal. It's not something that I really subscribe to. That being said, I will tell you a brief story and then we'll pass it on. We went on a ghost tour. And they were taking us around, and the place just is full. I mean, even long before, it was built in 1909, long before Stephen King showed up in 1974, there were paranormal stories surrounding that place. So they took us into this basement, and they said all the ghosts that are in this hotel have some sort of connection to the hotel. They were a former chef, or they were a guest that loved the place so much, or it was a housekeeper that worked till she was 102. They all have a connection except one named Lucy. And they say there's this room in the basement that Lucy lives in, and no one knows who she is. No one knows what her connection to the hotel is.
It's my mom.
It's Kevin's mom. And so, they're taking us around, and, it's fun. I like ghost tours. I like the stories. I think it's a lot of fun. I just don't buy into it. And this was posted on my Instagram story, and I still have the video. They said, okay, you guys go into the room. And I think I was third in line. There was about 8 of us, and I was third in line behind 2 other reporters. And as we're walking into the room, I make a smart-ass remark. Guy, is this where Lucy lives? Is this, all right, come on. Is this where Lucy lives, guys? And the door shut behind me.
Oh.
The door, I did not, I swear on my life. I'm sure, me being sort of the more scientific, rational person, I'm sure there was something to do with the building or one thing or the other. All I know is no one said anything as they were walking in. I made a smart-ass remark about whether or not Lucy actually was in that room, and then the door shut behind me without anybody touching it. So that is the story I will put out there.
Did you let out a Dr. Peep when that happened?
See, I love that Sean is so all in on this.
And on that note, we get the wrap.
I do have a question for Jake.
Go.
I have a question for Jake. I know, and this is something that I didn't know about until maybe a couple years ago, about the idea of Stephen King not loving Kubrick's The Shining. And obviously that was kind of like drilled into me a little bit more in Ready Player One. And The Shining to me to this day is the scariest movie I've ever experienced in my life. Even watching the clips in Jake's piece of watching Jack take that axe to the door is just, it's horrifying. It's terrifying. My question to you though is, do you get a sense from someone like Mike Flanagan that Kubrick's movie was not done well enough to Stephen King's standards? Like, is that, like, do you think Mike Flanagan loves The Shining? Or
I do think Mike Flanagan loves The Shining. It is possible to like Kubrick's Shining and Stephen King's Shining, but though they are different. But the main reason Stephen King hates The Shining is because Jack is never redeemed. Jack doesn't get the redemption. There's a moment at the end of the novel where Jack breaks loose of control of the Overlook and tells Danny, run. And he has that moment of redemption where he gets to be a good father. Kubrick did his own thing, and then it's a very haunting image in the book where Jack takes a mallet. It's not an axe, a mallet, and I think Stephen King describes it as a macabre dance. He starts smashing his face in with the mallet, almost trying to just get it, as he's going down the hallway, smashing his face in with a mallet. But it's a moment where he is trying to battle, just like someone's trying to battle alcoholism.
My story, which if people have followed on social, you'll have an idea where I got to go earlier this week, was something that is unexpected because we can almost anticipate interviews are going to come down the pipe due to movies. Like Jake knew Dr. Sleep was coming. We'd been hearing about this potential visit out to the Stanley. Kevin knows that a Terminator movie is happening, so while he might not believe the fact that Arnold and Linda are going to be in a room, he can potentially look forward to the fact that he's going to be there. I did not expect to be invited to Bruce Springsteen's house in New Jersey for a sit-down interview with him. And
say that one more time?
I did not expect...
I'm sorry, I missed that. Could you say that one more time?
To be invited...
turn my volume up. What did you say?
Bruce Springsteen's house in New Jersey... to speak to him for his new documentary, Western Stars. Now, Western Stars is a documentary, a concert film, basically, that Bruce co-directs. And he told us in the interview that, it's a generous credit. He said, he helped him sort of conceive a lot of the stuff that takes place in between the songs. He said he didn't get anywhere near a camera or do anything really filmmaker-wise, but he really helped put together this project. And they brought it to the Toronto International Film Festival, but that's where it had its world premiere. And it was really funny. Like this year, I wrote this in a piece that I put up on CinemaBlend. It feels like the universe has been just trying really hard to get me to meet Bruce Springsteen. And it was never able to work until it finally worked out really, really well, which was over the summer, they had a New Jersey premiere for the film Blinded by the Light, Gorinda Chada's film, and I was invited to go up to that. And they were saying on the way to that, because I'm a huge Bruce fan. I grew up, worshiping Bruce's music, and so I was really excited to see Blinded by the Light when it came out. But I wasn't able to go up to that for the timing of it. And
I remember that really bothered you.
I texted Jake when I had to pass on it, and I said, dude, that means he's going to be there. And not only is he going to be there, then they were like, and then the after party is going to be at the Stone Pony, which is a very important club in New Jersey where Bruce got his start. And once they said it was going to be at the Stone Pony, I said, oh, that means that he's going to get up and play. I just know he's going to get up and play. But I still couldn't go, and I held off, and sure enough, I tracked the entire evening via social media, and then, of course, Bruce did get up and play. Now, he didn't play any of his own songs. He played a bunch of covers, and so I didn't feel too bad about that. Then when we were in Toronto, they said, oh, Western Stars is going to be here, and we're putting together a luncheon for a couple of press. Can you be there? But it was much later in the festival when I was already going to be going home. And they even said to me, they're like, can you fly back to Toronto to be there for this event? And I said, no, I can't go back after just coming right back. So I had to miss him a second time. This third time, I finally had to make it happen. And it was a group of 5 of us who were handpicked to go to Bruce's his private studio and get 30 minutes with him to sit down and just talk about his music and his movie and life in general and just crazy stuff that I still can't actually, to me, literally thinking back onto the event, it feels like a dream that I had, or it actually feels like the only way to describe it is that it happened to somebody else and I watched it happen, but I can't quite process that it was me who was sitting there. Because the weirdest part of it is like when you're asking Springsteen a question and he's looking at you and paying attention and then he starts answering you specifically, your brain says to you like, holy shit, that's Bruce Springsteen.
And I listened to that audio and he's not there. It doesn't sound, because we've done enough of these to know when someone doesn't matter what you're asking, they're delivering the message of go see my product.
Oh, yeah.
He was listening to you and he was answering your questions. It sounded like you were just sitting down with him, like shooting the shit. It didn't sound like there was a purpose for the conversation to be happening other than people just talking.
That's a great point. Because you know how often we get that where someone starts giving you an answer and you just know it's a rehearsed answer or a talking point or some such. So that's really funny that you say that because Josh Horowitz from MTV was one of the people who did it with us. It was Kate Erblin from IndieWire. It was Mike Ryan from Uprocks, Eric Davis from Fandango, and then Josh Horowitz from MTV were the other ones who were there. They're all diehard Bruce fans too. It's really funny that you say that, Jake, because I was watching Josh Horowitz's stuff with the Zombieland 2 cast, and he asked a good question. I forget what it was, but Jesse Eisenberg gave an answer that as soon as he started giving it, I was like, oh, that's just like, you could tell that's such a rehearsed answer. And as soon as he finished it, Emma Stone said, did you have media training? And I was like, oh, that's really funny.
Wow.
Because even she knows it was a BS answer. But you just know that. You just hear those answers when they're not authentic. But everything in Bruce's interview for that 30 minutes was just a great, authentic, honest conversation, just reactions to the things that we brought up. And the best thing about it was we all treated it when we were going out there we're not trying to get huge scoops. We're not trying to break stories. Let's just all experience this as, wow, we're here. We're all movie journalists and we never expected to ever be here. And let's just enjoy being with Bruce. And that, I think, led to it being one of the most unforgettable experiences of my career.
Sean, one of the things I found that I loved about this particular story was when we had the Blinded by the Light director on, we were talking about Gurinder Chadha. We were talking about the idea of Bruce Springsteen and how much of an effect it had on her and also you. And that's when I realized how much of a Bruce Springsteen fan you were, which kind of made me even more excited that you were going there. Visually, though, because I'm a guitar player, you said you saw a bunch of guitars sitting around there. Like, I want to know what the visual was like in that room. Like, what did it look like?
Okay, so it's essentially a barn, but it's like 7 barns put together in a long stream. And when I say barn, I really mean like the most pristine structure that you've ever seen in your life. It's wood. It's all wood. And once you step into it, it's completely soundproofed. And Kevin, I'm going to tell you something.
5-star barn.
Oh, dude, it's the most gorgeous thing. And he's been recording there since 2006. This is his recording studio. I saw Max Weinberg's drum kit.
Oh my gosh.
Dude,
really?
There is, and then beyond that is singing booths. There's like 3 singing booths that he can go into and track vocals if he wants to. But Kevin, there has to be 45 guitars.
Like, were they hanging up or were they just sitting on the, where were they doing?
Some hanging, floor racks, everything. Acoustics, electrics. There's about a dozen different types of organs. There's like pianos, organs, glockenspiels, bass guitars. But dude, here's the thing. Everything in that studio, you'll love this. Everything is mic'd and turned on 24 hours a day. And he has technicians, engineers in the studio around the clock. They just work shifts because they never know when he's going to want to come in, when he's been inspired by something, and they have to be ready to throw on Pro Tools and start recording.
That's unbelievable.
He doesn't want to wait. He wants to walk into the studio.
So if he gets inspired.
Yes. He wants to walk in, pick up whatever he wants, and start going, and they have to be ready to record it because they never know when he's going to come. He can come 24 hours a day. He can come night and day. I told Michelle that, and Michelle goes, that sounds a little diva-ish. And I was like, yeah, but you think it's working for him? I think probably that process is working pretty well for Bruce, so he should be able to do whatever he wants to do.
I would also imagine those people who are working there around the clock probably are all in on it. They probably love it. It's a cool concept.
They love it.
What a cool! It's like Jake's story about Stephen King. I mean, Stephen King obviously had the idea that he can go to a pad of paper and start writing or typing. Right, that's easy for him. Yeah. But if a songwriter comes up with something immediately and they want to record it, what do? You have to have something. So then he says,
they said a new song. Bruce could come in with a new song, and they could have it to track on all the different tracks as quickly as if it's a 5-minute song. He'll do every instrument for 5 minutes. And like he'll do the pianos, he'll do the drums, he'll do the rough, and just put it all together, and then he'll just sit there and listen to it play back, and then he can start tweaking it.
See, that's unbelievable to me. I was wondering what the visual was like for you, because it sounds like it's awesome. Because I heard in the interview, I listened to the whole audio about the size of the. I think he joked about the size of the screen in Toronto being the side of his barn. Which and I was trying to visualize what the barn looked like, and now that I'm glad you mentioned it was like this, like almost like a higher class barn. Because now I'm envisioning like beautiful wood, like guitars. I can see it in my mind now. It's awesome.
I'll do you one better. The Western Stars documentary, and then we'll move on after this. And then you can go to CinemaBlend if you want to read my piece too. It's up there right now. The Western Stars documentary is filmed in the barn. He filmed it in the barn on his property in New Jersey.
When does it hit theaters?
Friday, October 25th. It opens everywhere. And essentially what he said was, this is all new material that he wrote for himself solo. He's not doing it with the E Street Band. He doesn't plan on touring with it, so he wanted to give his fans an option to be able to see these songs live, so he did the movie component. So it's him playing this album from start to finish with a symphony component, and they are incredible. He just hired a bunch of session musicians who learned the entire album, and they did it over the course of 2 days. They just played the album start to finish with a bunch of pros, and then he cuts in a lot of other footage, home video footage and stuff to make the movie together. But the barn, the way he describes it is just so personal, and Bruce, he's like, we've owned this barn for, it's a 100-year-old barn. We've owned it for years. We host a million parties. We've had weddings. We've had baptisms. So every vibe in the barn, every spirit is something positive. It's something celebratory. And I just knew when I wanted to make this record, I wanted to be in the vibe of the barn. And I got goosebumps just listening to him talk about like all the inspirations he pulled from this location on his property. I loved it. I loved it.
Sean's impressions are very underrated, by the way. You sounded, that sounded a little bit like Bruce Springsteen, to be honest.
I was trying to throw a little bit of Bruce in there, yes.
I want to give Sean a quick credit, by the way. Go to his interview because he asks a great question, because people think about Bruce Springsteen and you think about E Street Band, and those are like two very synonymous things. And the movie and music in the film is not E Street Band music. No. It's just Bruce. And it was interesting to hear Bruce Springsteen, little tease, just go there and read it about why he didn't use E Street in this. And I learned a lot from the interview because I didn't realize that Bruce Springsteen didn't tour on the Nebraska album. I mean, there was a lot of things in there as somebody who's a casual fan that I learned about. So it was cool to follow it.
Well, not to be outdone, Kevin also got to go to some pretty amazing places, and one specifically. This is nuts
that all of these happened at the same time.
In the course of a week, we were all able to do these. We're not trying to show off, I swear to God. Kevin went on an amazing vacation. I don't know how much of it you want to share, but the one story I want you to tell is the Kill Bill restaurant.
Yeah, I'll just keep it super quick. My wife and I went on our wedding anniversary. We planned it out. I've always wanted to go to Japan because of Kill Bill. When I saw Kill Bill at a certain time in my life, I kind of almost fell in love with Japanese culture, and I took Japanese in college because of it. I bought the Japanese DVD of the film so I could watch the House of Blue Leaves scene in full color, all these things. So Japan was always actually on my bucket list. I actually almost went there and taught English for a year in college, but it would have delayed my graduation. Cool. But I always wanted to go there anyway. So we went to Shanghai, Okinawa, Nagasaki. Shanghai specifically we went to because of the movie Her, because Spike Jonze shot all the exteriors of futuristic LA in Shanghai. That when Joaquin Phoenix is walking around LA in the future, it's actually Shanghai to it looks like futuristic. Anyways, so we get to Japan, we land, my wife Lauren goes, we gotta go to dinner tonight. And I was like, where are we going? She goes, it's a surprise, I won't tell you where we're going. I was like, okay, but we just landed at like 8 o'clock. Do you want to just stay in? And she goes, no, it's a surprise. We need to go. And she was freaking out. She was emailing whoever she was emailing to find out the timing of it to make sure we got there on time. So we pull up to this building, and I have no clue. I didn't know anything about this place. It was called Gonpachi. And essentially when you walked in, Lauren stood back and said, I want you to walk in first. And it was instantaneous that I knew what it was. It was the place that Tarantino went to eat that inspired the way the House of Blue Leaves scene looks in Kill Bill. So when you walk in, it's the exact design. There's an upstairs area. It looks exactly like the House of Blue Leaves on a miniature scale.
That's amazing.
I was envisioning the Crazy 88s running in. I was thinking of the band.
Your pictures were great when you were running up the stairs.
Yeah. And so you walk in, I mean, from my mind, I mean, thankfully, to Lauren's surprise, I knew it instantaneously. There was nothing that indicated it more than the upper structure of the restaurant.
Sure, I could tell right in your photos immediately.
Yeah, but then when you walk in, there's a case that has like it's dedicated to Quentin Tarantino. He's with the owner. There's like images of what the movie looked like. It was so crazy. So and then they took us upstairs to the garden that inspired the scene when she fights Lucy Liu's character at the end of Kill Bill. Volume 1, unfortunately, it's Kill Bill. I'm just referring to it from a factual standpoint.
Thank you.
But to be honest, it was a big surprise. That as well, we were in Japan, so there's a lot of things we wanted to do movie-wise. We went to the Park Hyatt, which is where Lost in Translation was filmed. We wanted to stay there, but it was absurdly expensive. Japan's is so expensive, it was unreal. But this hotel was so crazy over the top that Lauren said, we'll stay somewhere else, but I want to take you here. So we went to the New York bar, which is the scene where he's sitting there, drinking, probably a Suntory time, whatever it was, and Scarlett Johansson, who's, not having a great time because her husband's off shooting photography and sleeping with other women, I think. And so essentially we sat there and I got to do the Suntory time recreation. Then we went to this was the craziest thing, the actual karaoke room where they shot the karaoke scene. Not only the real place, we went to the room 601 where they shot it.
That's awesome.
We're Americans in Tokyo walking around. There's a language barrier. We're trying to tell the cab driver where to go. They take us to the wrong karaoke con, which is the name of the place where they shot it. I walk in and I go up to the guy. I'm like, sir, I go, Lost in Translation? And he goes, he didn't no idea what I was talking about, ironically, because I'm saying Lost in Translation.
That's funny.
And so I pull up a poster of Lost in Translation, and he goes, oh. And then I see the guys kind of have this moment where they're like, they want my money and they don't want me to leave. Yeah. And I'm like, are they gonna just like lie that this is the right spot?
Like, just tell the kid it's over there.
So I hear them talking to amongst themselves, the guys who run the place. And I at one point the guy comes over to me and goes, well, it looks like the scene from the movie. I'm like, no, I want the real place. He goes, oh, okay. People in Japan, by the way, are the nicest people. This guy, and this happened a lot throughout the trip. At one point, Lauren and I were lost, and there was this woman walking around with her kid, and we asked her where to go for a certain direction. She said that way. 5 minutes later, we were lost. She ran back to us and said, no, it's this way. Right. So this guy at the karaoke con literally takes us and walks us to the other karaoke con to get to the real place. And this is the weirdest part about it. We walk in and I go up to the guy. I'm like, I want the lost in translation room. He goes, 601. I'm like, yes. He goes, well, it's in a different building. I'm like, oh my God. So they had to walk us to another building, to a separate area. We go in. It's literally the exact same room. The walls look the same except for the zebra print's gone. The lines are still all there. And then we proceeded to do karaoke for an hour. By the way, the karaoke there is so interesting. It's all remixed random versions of the songs. Like we did Slipknot, One Direction. We did Bradley Cooper, Lady Gaga, Shallow. And we're in this room and it's where they filmed it. It was so wild. So anyways, that was what I was doing for the past week. But it was surreal. If you ever get a chance to go to Japan, go to Tokyo, that Kill Bill restaurant it's like walking into a Tarantino dream. The guy
which is walking into your dream.
Yeah, I mean, it was wild. And the food was amazing, too. But that was pretty cool. So,
Jakey, you were going to say that?
I just love that, like, Kevin gives us an incredible story about where he's been over the last couple of days. And he goes, so that's what I was doing.
No, but I mean, compared to what you guys were doing
there was one moment where we were all like we were all texting each other because I think at one point even I'm going to give Gabe a shout out. He was doing something with Ryan Johnson, and then which he won't speak about. Yeah, he was doing something with Ryan Johnson. Yeah, I was gearing up to go to the Shining Hotel. Sean was gearing up to interview Bruce. Kevin was in Tokyo, and there was just sort of this moment where it's just like, what, because we all have moments where usually 2 or 3 of us are doing something at one time, but for all 4 of us to be just in different places and such different, almost things that are so niche to us. Right, things that are all like almost like written for. Well, here's a thing that Jake would like, and here's a thing Sean would like. Here's a thing Kevin would like.
Yeah.
Props to Gabe, by the way. I haven't seen the video yet, but he sent us some photos of the Ryan Johnson shoot, and it's like epically lit. Like it's a really cool sequence. Like they're in the front of a theater. It looks like the projector light is on, and they're just sitting there with the seats behind it, and it looks awesome. I mean, people who
on behalf of Knives Out, we'll be able to share that for.
And Knives Out's awesome. I can't wait for people to see it. I know Sean and Gabe saw it at Toronto. It's an excellent movie. It's a great theater experience too. So.
Well, speaking of theater experiences, let's go really quickly through this week's in movies. The segment of the show where we mention films that we haven't seen yet. Starting with Countdown. Anyone seen Countdown? No. Nothing.
This is my most embarrassing part of the week, by the way.
I mean, we really do this for a living.
We are film critics, and we don't. Like, we work backwards, though. We work 3 weeks ahead, though. That's the
usually
difference.
Yes. Yeah. The Current War, the director's cut of The Current War.
Which I guess they're saying director's cut because it actually premiered at the Toronto Film Festival like 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Yeah. 2 years ago, yes.
And apparently that cut was rushed, right? Apparently, that's what I read. That the Toronto cut was rushed, and so this cut's apparently more of what the filmmaker wanted to do. Hence,
correct.
The
I think they even went back and did reshoots. The cast is actually really impressive. It's Benedict Cumberbatch, Michael Shannon, Tom Holland. It's got a great cast. It's Edison versus what's the other name I'm trying to think of?
Wait, no? Bad Boys 2-star Michael Shannon? Isn't that movie?
Bad Boys 2. Tesla. Thank you, Gabe. Nice job. Yes, Bad Boys 2-star Michael Shannon. Black and Blue. Anyone seen Black and Blue?
But I want to.
The junket for that conflicted with the Shining experience.
Do you know, I got a for your consideration email for Black and Blue today. I didn't realize this was an awards contender.
Looks good.
All right, man. Well, we haven't seen it yet. However, we have seen...
I got some behind the scenes stuff to tell you about that.
All right. Oh, tell us off.
I know what Jake's talking about.
Yeah, Kevin knows what I'm talking about.
This film, and we talked about it already, but we want to remind everybody that Craig Brewer's Dolomite Is My Name is finally hitting Netflix on the 25th of October. I'm pretty sure it's making all of our top 10s.
So good.
It's fantastic.
So good.
And not only is it the celebration of, the return of Eddie Murphy, and it's a great return to form for Eddie Murphy. It's just a really good example of let's get a group together and make a movie. Like we've seen a couple of those films before. And obviously this is a story of Rudy Ray Moore, who made a couple of films, really low budget films, but very passionate films that he just wanted to see the types of things that he loved in movies. He sort of tapped into the blaxploitation era of that time, and he made a film called Dolomite based on a character that he'd invented called Dolomite. And it's just a really funny look at how some people got together to make a movie that, that he believed in. I don't know if everybody who was sort of making it believed in it as much as he did until they sort of saw his passion for it. Craig Brewer, it's funny, like, I'm really glad Craig Brewer did this because it's very much like Hustle and Flow,
Yes.
in that Terrence Howard's character had such a belief in his rap career at that point. He was going to give up everything in order to get to it. That's what Eddie Murphy is like in Dolomite. And so you can start seeing it on Netflix on October 25th. Cannot recommend it enough.
Love Hustle and Flow, by the way. If you haven't seen that or Black Snake Moan, he's a really talented filmmaker, and I'm glad. I think he's doing the sequel to Coming to America, which makes me even more excited after what he did on Dolomite. And Dolomite's my favorite Eddie Murphy performance since Nutty Professor, so
I read something really interesting. I know we don't want to spend too much time on this, but I read something really interesting when it comes to the Oscar consideration for Dolomite. The line I read was, he's not guaranteed to get a nomination, but if he gets a nomination, he instantly becomes someone to consider for winning. Because if he gets into the race, then people stop and go, we really should give him an Oscar.
Yeah.
So
the hardest thing for him will be getting a nomination, but the second he gets that nomination, he's someone that we should look at to potentially win.
Wow.
I will say this: Dolomite came out of nowhere for me. That concerns me, and I'll tell you why. Like I think we were all blown away by how much we love Dolomite, and I don't think that I had any idea how good it was going to be. And I don't feel like there's a sense out there right now to the public of how great this film truly is. There's so many movies coming out, especially in this time of the year, that I hope it doesn't get buried. It's so well done.
Well, I look forward to us getting Dolomite coffee table books and pillows from our good friends at Netflix as the award season rolls on.
That joke being that for Roma last year, we got 18 different coffee table books. We got pillows. We got,
You know what I do have is I'm staring at it right now, a signed poster in a beautiful frame from Alfonso Cuarón. And Netflix friends, if you happen to be listening to this week's episode of ReelBlend, an Irishman poster with some signatures on it would be chef's kiss. Would be ideal. All right, the blend game. We have said we are playing hashtag JohnCarpenterBlend this week for no apparent reason. To celebrate
one of his most famous movies is Halloween, and Halloween is next week.
Thank you, Jake, for bringing it all full circle and home for us to play the blend game. I've been told I get to go first. I am going to celebrate. So if you do John Carpenter, in my opinion, you should also do Kurt Russell. Those two go hand in hand, almost as if you were doing Scorsese and De Niro, or what's another really good director-actor
Scorsese,
combo?
DiCaprio. There's a zillion of them.
See, I don't like the Scorsese, DiCaprio.
I like Ryan Coogler, Michael B. Jordan.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. Well, anyway,
Tim Burton, Johnny Depp.
Yeah, that's one I probably.
Though my Tim Burton pick was not a Johnny Depp movie.
Then it was wrong. I am going with Big Trouble in Little China. Big Trouble in Little China is my favorite John Carpenter film. Might not be his best, but I love, obviously, I've talked at length about the types of action heroes that I like on this podcast. Charismatic, in over their head, don't want to admit that they are overmatched, sarcastic, quippy type heroes, and that's exactly what Kurt Russell gives you in that film. I like Jack Burton more than I like Snake Plissken, and that movie to me, by the time I saw it when I was younger, I'd seen a lot of traditionally conventional films, a lot of family films probably at that point, and I'm pretty sure, I'd have to go back and look, I'm pretty sure Big Trouble in Little China was the first John Carpenter film I saw. And I just happened to see it on HBO, and it was just the weirdest. It was one of those movies that finally said to me, like, movies don't have to follow a template. They can actually be anything you want them to be. And then I was like, and maybe I saw like Wonka or something like that. And Wonka was probably pretty out there for a standard film. But I was like, what the hell is this movie? Like the villains were so strange, and the powers that they brought were weird. And the movie didn't try overly hard to explain its mythology. And it threw this blue collar guy into the middle of it. And he was sort of the gateway for the audience because
is he one of the best blue collar guys?
Oh yeah,
for such like a good looking movie star, he so well represents us. He's so good at that.
I don't know who else you'd pick. I mean, Harrison Ford in some roles
Denzel
early on.
I think Denzel represents
I'd
the
give it to
average
Kurt
man.
Russell over that.
I mean,
I'd give it to Kurt Russell over that. Yeah. So I'm going with Big Trouble in Little China.
Great pick.
Again,
Great pick.
Probably not his best, but absolutely.
Well, that's why favorite is better.
Yeah. Kevin, you're up.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting thing because if I were to give my pick for Carpenter for his best movie, it would be The Thing. But I can't not go with Halloween, and I know that's I know it's cliche, and I actually feel cringy picking it, but I feel cringy picking it because it's so obvious. That's the reason why I feel cringy picking it. The reason why I picked it is because it has single-handedly my second favorite piece of movie trivia ever, which is that Michael Myers' mask is a Captain Kirk mask, and I always every time I watch the movie now, it just blows my mind. But a lot of things about that film.
Do you remember how much it cost?
Yeah, it was. I asked Carpenter.
Wasn't it like $3.99 or something
nothing.
Like that?
Yeah,
it was
and
dirt cheap.
I remember doing the Halloween junket last year, and Jason Blum, I guess, didn't know that story. So I bring out the mask in front of him and Carpenter, and it was cool because I was worried that Carpenter would be like, oh, come on, this again? But because Blum didn't know the story, it ended up being this great bit where like Carpenter explained it to him and then like pulled the mask up and showed it, and like it was cool. Anyways, but that film is a great example of necessity is the mother of invention in the sense of the shots in that movie are brilliant. The POV shots, specifically the opening shot, the continuous tracking shot, which Carpenter said there is a stitch in there or an edit in there, but it's, you can't really find it. It's hard to find. But I just find that movie to be so brilliantly executed. The fact that it went, the time of year of when it was shot, and then when it takes place, it wasn't even shot in the fall, right? They had to like put leaves down, from what I understand. The idea of the score being done by John Carpenter, it has one of the most iconic scores in the history of cinema, and I just find it to be a perfect film from a horror standpoint, but also a performance standpoint. It is genuinely terrifying with very minimal deaths compared to what we're seeing today. That's why I didn't really particularly love the new Halloween film, because not only do they should have ended it because they should have bookended it, but it relied way too heavily on brutal violence. And I think the violence in the first Halloween is horrifying. I mean, all violence is horrifying, but it was done, in my opinion, to serve the story rather than shock the audience. And I think that the way the violence was done in the first Halloween was done out of storytelling, not because they wanted to shock, in my opinion.
I don't love that the new one is getting 2 sequels. I don't think that's necessary.
I've said this a million times. You're calling the movie Halloween. You bookend it. Kill Michael Myers off. Don't do. I mean, I get the bit over the years. We don't think he's dead. He's not dead. Whatever it was. But you have 3 generations of Strodes right there. Kill him. Give us that satisfaction of that ending.
Final ending too. Like him getting out of that is going to be.
You know what I mean? Though it's like, and then they tease you that he's not going to be, and then now we have a new one coming out. It's like I don't know. That bothered me really, really heavily. But anyways, so I went with Halloween.
All right, Jake, you're up.
I love the rare weeks like this where all 3 of us choose 3 completely different films.
Nice.
It doesn't happen very often. I chose The Thing.
There you go.
Which is probably a top 3, maybe even top 2 horror movie for me. First of all, I'm a sucker for a bunch of people in a room or in a cabin, isolated in the middle of nowhere, and then something happens. I'm a big sucker for that premise. And that sort of just this blend of horror, but then also kind of a whodunit, because you're trying to figure out who is the thing, and that it's transferable, and just the pure joy I get watching the natural effects, the practical effects that he used. I mean, I know that they tried to do the prequel a couple of years ago that set it up. I mean, first of all, that's a story I never wanted to see. I love the idea of just the dog. Like, I don't want to know where that dog came from. I just want to see that. I just think that's such a brilliant way to I mean, because the story in my head of what happened was way better than having it explained to me. Sure. But it's such a perfect cast. I mean, Kurt Russell is obviously killer, but like he doesn't stand above and beyond of everyone else. Like he's equal to everyone. The ending, because I have always thought the ending never tells you which one of them it is, right?
No, it's very open-ended. And I think Carpenter has kind of refused to go. It's almost like David Chase trying to address the end of The Sopranos. He's never going to give you the definitive answer on Tony Soprano.
It still blows my mind that The Thing is a remake, by the the way. Because my initial viewing of that film was as if it was The Thing original. You know what I mean? Yeah. I didn't. And again, this, it just speaks to me not knowing the history of that story.
Well, so I guess that speaks to I guess all reboots or remakes have a reason to exist because sometimes they might make a better version, right?
Right, and that's kind of we had a lot of arguments about remakes on the show recently with Lion King, but I mean, I'm thankful The Thing was remade because I don't know that I would have ever experienced that story, and even something like The Departed, which I was watching today, is a remake, and that's crazy to me that that's a remake, and I don't know that I'd ever would have seen that original film had it not been for Martin Scorsese's. I actually have never seen the original, whatever it's called. Is it called The Departed? No,
I don't think so.
No.
The Internal Affairs.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Also,
so, I mean,
back to the thing is, I would argue, I'm curious about where you guys would rank it. The Thing, top 5 movie poster.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I actually was considering that when we just did movie posters
Beautiful
recently.
poster.
All right, audience picks for John Carpenter-Blend. John Palmer, Paul Marsh, and many others went with Big Trouble in Little China. Dustin Stout, Declan Evans, and a few others also said Halloween. Rich Baird said The Thing, and then Michelle Wardlaw went off the board of the three of us and went with Christine, which is very much in the vibe of Stephen King, which we've been talking about a lot. So.
If my father-in-law was on this show today, he would have picked Christine. That's a movie he watches at his house every time I go over there. Him and my wife, Lauren, obviously watch it. Oh, because he's a big car guy. Think about it. Anything car-related, Christine's going to...
It's really well done.
It's really well done. It is well done.
It's really well done.
Yeah.
All right. Again, thank you, everybody, for participating and playing along via social media, whether you were emailing us, again, at ReelBlend@CinemaBlend.com. For next week, so we had a lot of conversations about we wanted to do something Arnold specific because Terminator Dark Fate is coming. And next week we'll be able to tell you guys the stories of the junket weekend of The Room, of Linda and Arnold, if it happens. So we're going to use, specifically we're going to play Arnold Schwarzenegger blend, but we're going to do hashtag Arnold blend because we don't want to make you guys have to spell Schwarzenegger. So just use hashtag Arnold blend.
SCHWARNEGGER?
You might be right. You said it so fast I didn't really know. Yes? Sure.
We'll
yes.
Let me know retroactively.
Hashtag Arnold blend. But as an added incentive, the three of us are going to also give you our favorite Arnold one-liners. And it doesn't necessarily have to be from our movie. We can have a totally separate movie and then a one-liner from a different place. But we're going to give you our favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movies and our favorite one-liners.
Did we give this stipulation?
Right.
The stipulation.
The rule is none of us can pick Terminator 2. Because
which I think is fun. I wouldn't mind doing that moving forward if there are obvious choices.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because if you listen to any of these episodes, you know that T2 is Kevin's favorite movie of all time.
Right.
So that would remove him essentially from the mystery of the blend
game.
And
now I'm excited about it because I don't
know what I'm gonna pick.
I know my pick.
I don't either.
I know my pick.
I really don't know mine.
You don't know yours?
Fun to sort of think about.
Jake,
no.
you don't know yours?
Boy, I think mine's going to be Kevin's interview with him this weekend.
If it happens. If it happens. Yes, all right. Next week, in addition to Terminator stories, the boys will have been able to see The Irishman and potentially do some interviews for that too. So we'll be back with plenty more stories.
Check our Instagram for some photos.
For the blenders. Yes, stay tuned into the guys' social medias. And for that, you can go to @JakesTakes. at Kevin McCarthy TV or at Sean_O'Connell. Of course, go to @ReelBlend. Always do us a favor, drop us a review on iTunes. We'll read them at the top of the show. And we'll be back next week with, who's our guest next week? Oh, Tim Miller. We're hopefully going to have Tim Miller, the director of Terminator Dark Fate. Yes, because the boys are going to talk to him while they're out in Hollywood. So come back for that interview. We will be able to talk Dark Fate and The Irishman. And until next week...
Did
you mess it up?
No, I was gonna say Tenet just to throw you guys off, and then I said Dennett. Dunkirk.
Wow, you've changed.
I'm rusty this week, man.
We really are.